Hey Maggie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Rhiannon. Lovely to be here.
Thank you so much, Maggie. It's wonderful to have such an amazing Australian parenting expert here to talk about mum's wellbeing today, an author of many, many books, many of which I've read and listened to on Audible. The latest one and one I highly recommend is From Boys to Men. And it's a super special one that I've reread or listened to many times. So I highly recommend that one. Um, you are also an educator, and I love that we've connected because we both come from a teaching background. And you have amazing podcasts. One at the moment that you have is Parental as Anything. So you've got so many things going on.
And the good enough dad. That's
And the
the
good
newish
enough dad.
dad. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So many. I know, I know. And I could spend probably 15 minutes introducing you because you've got so
Oh,
many
let's get
amazing,
going.
amazing things going on. Yes, thank you for your work in the area, and I appreciate your time today. So let's kick off with one of my favorite questions. It's about mum's well-being. So I started teaching about 22 years ago. And as a naive graduate, I jumped into the classroom and I realized that mum's well-being was impacting the happiness and learning of children in the classroom. Yet I wasn't taught anything like that at university, and it wasn't in the curriculum or talked at in the staff meetings, etc. So I'm really passionate about it, and I believe it's foundational in child's development. What do you think about mum's well-being in a child's development?
Oh, heck. We know it's huge. We know that our capacity to create the strong attachment that children need is dependent on how much energy we have. Also, have we got the time? Have we got realistic expectations? And of course, we do know that we're wired, I think, as women, that we're constantly attacking ourselves. Right? The worst enemy we have is in the mirror. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing a brilliant job, you muck up one thing. As you try to go to sleep that night, you're going to be going, "God, why did I do that? What can I do else?" And so I find today's mums are actually under even more pressure, Rhiannon, than when I was raising my boys. And that's not just because of the digital world and how much time that consumes, but I think it's become more judgmental as well. So I absolutely believe, I keep saying to mums that I run into, just put the stick down that you're beating yourself with. You've got to remember no one gets this perfect, and that are you connecting with your kids? So really, like, does it matter if your house doesn't look like house and garden and you aren't doing a gourmet meal every night? And the fact that sometimes you're still co-sleeping, when people think you shouldn't be, just do what builds the safest relationship with your kids as much as you possibly can. And you'll tend to find that you'll cope better yourself. And there's no question that when we have mums not coping, it creates a tension in our kids. And it doesn't matter, dad's not coping as well, but we know that there's a particular thing. We still know that women are doing most of the emotional lifting, the cognitive lifting and the organization lifting. And I do believe that it really can impact our kids. So when we actually allow them to lower the bar, to have a little bit more chaos in the house, to leave the cleanup to the weekend and not stress because I didn't eat broccoli one night, I think everything goes better for everyone.
Oh, couldn't agree with you more. I think I love hearing it from you. I love that because I think when you talk about all the amazing information and advice for parents, which is just brilliant. Having that piece as well just helps them, gives them permission to slow down and just to take a minute for themselves so they can be that person for their children. I just love and adore that. Thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing that.
And I'm going to put my hand up, Rhiannon. I lock myself in the toilet some days to survive. I lock myself in the bathroom and told them I'm having a bubble bath, and they poke notes under the door. I created a chair out in the garden where I decided it was so noisy inside with four sons. I'm just going to chill outside, right? And then I realized they actually didn't care that I did those things. They
Mm,
just kept rocking on, right?
yeah.
But that actually made a difference to me.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And you know what I love is in even though you're so busy with lots of things going on and your work and raising four boys, you still said you knew the power of making that chill time. Take yourself outside to get some fresh air for 5 minutes or 3 minutes. The world doesn't fall apart, and the boys weren't worried. They weren't saying, "What are you doing, Mom?"
No,
Yeah,
no.
it
And
was.
I loved it because one of my boys put the note under the bathroom door that said, "If you don't answer, oh, can I? No, I'm going to get ice cream if because you can't answer no." because he used to say, "Can I have ice cream?" And of course I couldn't answer, but now he decided, if you don't answer, I'm having it. And I thought, well, at the end of the day, is that the worst thing that's going to happen when I've had 20 minutes rest? And what's beautiful, Rhiannon, is one of my 14-year-old sons one day, when everything was pretty stressful, just came up to me at one night and said, "Mum, I run the bath for you."
Oh,
Because he'd
how
linked,
beautiful.
right? So you can raise them. Once again, he was one of my lambs. The roosters wouldn't care two huts. But so once again, sometimes modeling, time for us is not us failing. It's us actually being empowered.
Yeah.
And our boys and our girls can witness that and learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much. Just flowing on from that, I know that you're a big advocate for wellbeing first, grade second. I love that too. I think it's definitely something that we're missing. And I suppose you just sort of said it then, wellbeing first, laundry second. And that's one of my favorite things for mums. Just take a minute for yourself before you put the load on. I think one of my tools is the cup of tea tool. Have that first, drink the whole thing right to the bottom,
Yeah.
not a sip and walk away, then get into the chores. That's how you can
Yeah.
fit it into your day. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Maggie, was about your own regular wellbeing practices. And I think you've just already named a few, just because sometimes shutting out when everyone's safe, you can shut yourself out, as you said, take a long toilet break or go outside for a few minutes. And wellbeing practices, what other ones would you like to share that you've used over the years to help support you raising your boys?
There's no question that time in nature was me. So gardening was a really big one. And I still do that when I've been away traveling. One of the first things I'll do is get out in the garden. I won't sit down and watch anything on TV. I just have to get back into the earth and ground myself. The second one is, and this is what I've done when I'm about to lose my schmick, is I need to go for a walk. And sometimes, and I still chuckle when the boys were a bit older, that, if I went for a 10-minute walk, they went, phew, that wasn't too bad. If I've gone for 20 minutes, they start unpacking the dishwasher. And if I've gone more than half an hour, they're nearly going to paint the house. But that's exactly what I do. I take my big feelings and I have to run it into the earth. So while I had the boys, I was still playing basketball. I prioritized that I was still going to play my sport. And if I could, we had a fabulous a retired English nanny that came when they were a little bit little. Just an hour for her to come so I could go for a run was really important for my sanity. And, that she didn't have to clean up the house or anything, just had to hang around and keep the kids alive. But I felt, and I still, once again, that's one of the biggest ways. The other ones are a little bit more subtle, but I'm a firm believer that the sounds that surround you influence your emotional state. I played so much Tony O'Connor music and Enya music that if I put it on today, the boys will just roll their eyes. But that was actually helping me regulate. And look, endlessly that music played their whole childhood and especially in adolescence. So I kind of have other ways. And then I guess I got into kind of profound relaxation and things as a consequence of working in palliative care and having Patrice King come and talk to us about that. So I was actually doing meditations, short ones, because there's no time for a long one, quite often to go to sleep at night. So I found that all of those together allowed my nervous system to it was able to get back into rest and digest. It wasn't always into fight and fight.
Yeah, I love that. Scheduling time. So having that time allocated for you to regulate and to have that time to go for a run. So scheduling is really important. And I love that you said that and that you did that, even if it was from getting a babysitter or someone in for that time. The walking, the senses. I love the music. I think that's brilliant to take the whole tone down. We use that in the classroom as you would have once upon a time. So using it in our homes as well is so powerful, and it takes the energy of the home to a different level, plus you're giving to yourself without anyone really noticing and you can even share the music around as well. We can all choose a song. I love that so much. I think that also when we're regulated, and that's part of being the essence of mum's wellbeing is regulating ourselves, self-soothing, taking time for us, so that when we are coming from that rest and digest, like you said, it's just emanating around the house, and our tone sets the tone for the house. And that's not just for mums, it's for dads too. But we do often set the emotional tone so that the men in our lives can bounce off us. and nothing has to be a rush or an emergency every day. And I really do believe in the power of that. So thank you for reiterating that. And that if you're doing it, Maggie, we all can. Okay. You have 4 boys, like my sister has 4 boys too. So you can do it. We can do it. We all can do it. Um, so
I think also there was one other regulator that I used a lot, and that's ridiculousness and laughter, because we know that we can shift the neurochemicals that are in our brain and we can influence it. Because I also was raised with a dad that had a great sense of humor. My mum was not, and she was quite distant and remote, so I wouldn't get any of that from her. But my dad was always, so it's a huge thing. I think that a lot of mums need to be able to lighten up a little more, because you can shift a really heavy moment sometimes by being just a bit ridiculous and turning into a dinosaur.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The jokes. And I remember my children saying, I love it when you joke with me. And I think I didn't realize the power of that. They, as you know, children teach us. I remember thinking, yeah, of course, I'll do it in the classroom. And I have to bring it to home as well, So I'm always listening, and they are often giving us signs and signals of what works. So we have to
Yeah.
listen to them and learn as well. So yeah, lightness and lightheartedness. I love that. Laughter does recalibrates us all. So we have touched on it a little bit, but self-kindness, self-acceptance, it comes from us first, and also, owning how we're feeling, and then being kind with whatever emotion we're trying to process. Would you like to just talk about the power of self-kindness in your life, and what it's been like, your journey? Has it always been part of your mothering journey?
No, definitely not. I'm from a background that due to that sort of childhood, that meant I didn't get it. Therefore, I grew up with a sense of not being enough and not deserving of love. So besides therapy, I recommend that enormously. I had to learn that I deserve to look after myself, and I had to burn out twice to learn it. So I hope anyone listening doesn't have to do that, because I was so determined to overcare for everybody else, that I'd put everyone else before me. And even though the fact, I was a really exceptionally good death doula, but volunteering for everything. I was on the school board, I was the kindy president, I was the one who was the, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
basketball coaching. I had to recognize, while that came from a good place, there was a part of me that was doing it in an unhealthy way. And after the second time I burned out, that's when I got it. And I have built a really good kind of inner little messenger that goes, no, you can say no. No, it's okay. Yep, it's all right. No, that will be good. It's taken me years. And sometimes I need my team to say no for me, because when I'm tired, I say yes to everything. So some big
Yes.
lessons as a woman on that journey. We will tend to feel, oh, I feel a bit guilty taking time for me. No more guilt.
Love that so much. I think there's a lot of power in no, and boundaries. It's something that we haven't been modeled or taught when we were young. And it does take sometimes, as you said, the burnout or the feeling really bad, or not being your best self at home or in situations, to realize, you know what, I'm doing so much for everyone else, but I'm not putting myself on my priority list. And I love that message. And I'm so glad to hear you again reiterating it, because when we're hearing it from you, I think it's just so much more powerful, and you're leading the way, and you know your stuff. So if we can really listen to Maggie, I'm hoping this will be shared with millions, that taking that time for yourself, not trying to be all and do all for everybody, and including yourself in your priorities, and taking care of yourself. It's a huge element to how we're going to raise amazing, well-adjusted, kind, strong, resilient boys and girls in the future. So it starts now from us. I just wanted to ask 2 more questions if we've got time, Maggie. And we might need to, I don't know if we'll be able to go deep into it, but just lately there's been a lot of media coverage on violence and aggression towards women from men mostly. And I think as educators and in our roles in parenting well-being and parenting of children, I think that we have a lot to share. Worthiness and effectively managing and expressing emotions, those 2 are some of my most passionate things to share with parents, teachers, and children. I'd love to hear what you think are some of the key points that we could share day in, day out, besides what we've already talked about, with the world.
Yeah. I think we have to recognize that no boy is born into being a violent human unless he's a sociopath, and of course that's actually a very tiny percentage. So what we know really is that learning to be aggressive. There's an aggression in boys that is kind of quite a normal part of being a boy, but very rarely does that equal violence. So how do they learn to be violent? Then I'm afraid they've been hurt, they've been violated, or else they've been shamed so much that it's created a deep sense of something inside them that they are not able to regulate. So as you know, that there is a fragility in boys, they're not tough. And so that when we allow our boys, and it's probably one of the greatest gifts I think I've left the world when I finally leave, is mothering our boys in terms of recognizing that they're not tough, and that when we work with them and allow the tenderness to stay there instead of being frozen and shut down, then we create men who are able to have empathy, not just for women and children, but for the world around them and themselves. And so I think it is a cultural thing. And I am going to say, I still believe, you will have known these men in high school and primary school. You would have seen already a lack of empathy, a hardness, needing to be violent towards others. So again, we can learn to be violent, but we can also learn to have empathy. And I think another one that's really important in this window is the fact that we have got men stepping forward with beautiful big hearts now, Rhiannon, being the dads they wanted that they didn't have, with big open hearts that are co-sleeping, that are supporting where the breast milk goes in the fridge, you name it. They're doing a great job. But we have to step up and make sure that our boys, particularly our impressionable teen boys in the age of 12 to 15, are not being marinated in pornography and violent content that teaches them the opposite way of being a man who's capable of having strength and backbone and a heart, because that is a really critical window. And I know that people working with boys in our schools and working with technology are hearing it every day. And there has been a significant increase in the sexual harassment of females in our schools, both girls, students, and female teachers. And it's directly linked to pornography. So whatever you do, have lots of conversations and check on what your boys are watching. And if he thinks that there's a misogynistic male, I'm not even going to mention their name, who deserves to be followed, have a really in-depth conversation with them about where they've learnt that. What does that mean? Because they are so easily influenced in that window to become an awesome man, or a man that's potentially going to struggle to create intimate relationships of any kind and may end up a very lonely, angry man. So I think we've got to watch that window, because I think we're doing pretty well down early years. I think we're changing the way. We're not as harsh at boys, and we're not shaming them as much, and we're not treating them like less than. I think we've got that, but I think that's the key window that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I love that. And I do agree with you. And I think I listened to something you said recently on ABC about the critical window. And I think you're right. We focus a lot more on that early years, and a lot of us are doing that. But then they get to that sort of high school, and we're, a little bit less removed, like less involved in their high school. But I think it's still to have that connection time. And even if it's just, a little bit of that, decalibration outside, chat, cup of tea together, I think keeping on top of what they're doing and not totally letting them push you fully away, I think that really does make a difference. Sometimes I think that parents might be a little bit busier at that time. They might be going back to work, and I think then there's a little bit of a disconnect. I think if we can just remember, no matter how big they're getting, that they still need to be hugged, and they still need that to be seen, heard, valued, like you said, to not let it go. And I think that critical window, I don't know if everyone knows about that 12 to 15-year-old window. And I've got a 15-year-old boy, and I definitely would absolutely agree with you on that, the 12 to 15 window. Yeah. And we've had some really good conversations lately, but even knowing what I do know and learning, I still have found it tricky. But having those awkward conversations, as you're an advocate for, is essential. And the shame factor. I think the shame being the master emotion is huge. And if we can, I think you said somewhere, I'm just going to have a look at my notes here, a moment of failure. They have some times where that, but it's not that they're a failure, and differentiating that. But also for ourselves, like when we muck up, yes, we're not a failure as a parent. We're like you said, the good enough parent or dad, the podcast you've got, it's about, made a mistake. We can, distance ourselves from that, or differentiate, and also the unconditional love for ourselves and our children. And I think that's the thing, that if we can learn to do it for ourselves, because we weren't taught to be worthy or love ourselves when we were young, and often wasn't modeled. And I know that a lot of
I
us grew up with parents that have,
yeah.
challenges. So
Yeah, I think one of the key challenges around boys is that because they're far more impulsive and they have a higher level of physicality, they
yeah,
just do so much more dumb stuff, right? And so they get busted a lot more. So when that's cumulative, but what happens really is that a boy's self-worth is actually linked to how they judge themselves. Did I do good? So you can see if the man box that, that portrays still the only way to be a really good man is to be the winner, the toughest, the most stoic, you know what I mean, at all costs. And probably that toughness is still being modeled out there. So when a boy fails something, and of course, I'm, really against the fact that we push them into formalized learning earlier before they're necessarily ready. Years of feeling like they'll turn that into a mindset that says there's something wrong with me. And anytime someone pokes that bear, right, then you're gonna end up with a lot of that rage that will come out. And that's why we must stop those sorts of things, that we
yes.
allow little boys to become still loved incredibly while they jumped on their brother from the top bunk, because they thought it was funny and they thought it was going to be fun. However, they didn't really think they could hurt them. And so we do this lots of emotional coaching. And that's exactly what I did with teenage boys in my classrooms. We'd have these big conversations, and when they see it from the other side, they go, whoa, yeah, no, that's not okay.
Mm,
But when we shame them and tell them they're wrong, you trigger the self-worth. The self-worth goes down into a darkness. That means I'm going to hate me, but
mm.
it's going to come out big time later,
Yeah,
especially around
absolutely.
failure. So,
Mm,
and rejection or loss. And of course,
yes.
that plays right into the domestic violence area. If they can't be the winner and they can't control something, or it can trigger something that has been set up somewhere in the journey to be that man.
Absolutely. I just think that that is critical. If we can acknowledge that as adults, as leaders, as lighthouse leaders or wellbeing leaders, as I know that you say lighthouse leaders, if we can acknowledge that and realize that the suicide rate for males in our in Australia and also the domestic violence, they're huge, and it has to be something we're doing culturally. So if we can really own our emotions, give space to the boys to feel and express, and I feel like a broken record sometimes at school when I'm saying it's okay to feel upset, angry, frustrated. It's just not okay to push. And let's think about how else we can manage how we feel. And I have so many discussions with boys, especially about what do I do with my anger? Like they literally will ask me, and it's like we can give some ideas, but they're asking at this age, which is brilliant. But as they get into the teen years, they're probably not going to ask as much. So they need to see, yeah, as you said, good models of what we do when we're frustrated as adults. So
Yeah.
where does it go? Where can we expend it? And to listen and to be heard and valued. I know that kids, they say to me, well, my parents don't care about what I think, or there's so many when you open up that, and I just wish I could tell every parent that to just listen, and if they just give space to the feelings, that would make that tiny little thing would make a difference. And to be able to give that space, you have to look after yourself, because if you're tired and stressed, you're going to say, not now, don't worry about it, stop crying. You're going to dismiss them with that shutdown. And if you actually look after yourself, feel good for just a few minutes a day, as you said, Maggie, you will be able to be that space for the child so that they can just feel safe and connected, like you said, at school or at home. And what a difference we will make together going forward.
Yeah. I think also recognizing, there are different ways that boys prefer communication to be. And so often that's another thing that, and I've got an article on my website, go find it if you've got a teenage boy. There are some key things that can improve your capacity to communicate with him. And when you've got that on board, you'll watch such a big difference. They will be able to listen to you. So yeah, good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your final comment, special message on boys to men, from boys to men, was key. You were talking about the essentials that boys need. And when I was listening to it, I was thinking we all need it. So it was like nutrition, sleep,
Yeah.
kindness, and it was so many beautiful things that I was thinking it's perfect. And I want everyone to download that Audible book now. Thank you so much for your time, Maggie. I could speak to you for hours. I would just like to ask if there's what you're working on at the moment, any special projects, and also
Oh, very
places.
exciting. So
Yeah.
the 10th and final book, Rhiannon, I thought I'd already done it, but I've kind of gone right back to where I started as a high school teacher, and that is that We need to empower parents to know how they can better support our teens because of the alarming numbers of those who are really struggling. So it's helped me help my teen, where we want parents to know, how can I support them? Because there isn't enough counselors, there isn't enough therapists. And even if they have one, it's what happens in the 2 weeks in between. So it's a biggie, and it lands on the 1st of August. And it's kind of like really practical, like, what do I do if I've just found the vape in my son's bag? Or what do I do if I've it's worked out my daughter's sexually active? What do is this depression, or is this just a grumpy teen? How do I tell the difference? So it's going to give you really specific steps and strategies so you can be the one who can begin the journey of discovering, so that you don't have to fix it for your teen, because that's not how they're going to grow into an adult. I'm going to walk beside them, and together we're going to help them work out how we can go forward with great information and great resources. So, yeah,
Wow.
that's it. My 10th and final.
That sounds amazing. I'll have to have you back on for when that's launched, because I'd love to share that with everybody too. That sounds amazing, Maggie. Thank you so much. Where can people connect with you in the real world or online?
Oh, look, MaggieDent.com is my website, and I have truckloads of blogs and audios and everything on there about every single thing that tricks you out. The 6 seasons of Parental as Anything are always going to be up there. And then on YouTube, I have over 200 short videos that help you from tweens, from toddlers to teens, about some of the key things that you might be worried about. And all of that is 100% free again. I want to make it as accessible as possible for people. So, yeah, isn't that frightening? I said to one of my sons the other day, even when I'm dead, I'm going to still be out there, you poor thing.
That's the best. You're
They all
going to
burst
go
out
on
laughing.
forever.
Great, great. Thanks, Mum.
Maggie, I love it. I love it. That's the best though, forever and ever, Maggie. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. You're making an absolute positive difference in our world, and it's yeah, a pleasure to be with you today and to know you. And thank you again for being here, Maggie.
Thank you for what you're doing as well, Rhiannon.
Thanks
Keep
so
up the
much.
good work.
Thank you.